Los Angeles, California, January 1969. The rain had been falling since morning, the kind of slow, gray Los Angeles rain that makes the city feel smaller, quieter, closer to itself. The streets near Culver City were empty. No crowds, no cameras, no reporters. Just a building. An unmarked building with a single interior light burning behind frosted glass. Inside that building, Muhammad Ali, 3 years stripped of his title, legally barred from fighting professionally in America, the most famous athlete on the planet reduced to waiting, was about to walk through a door he had been thinking about for months. He had no idea what was waiting for him on the other side. Neither did his trainers. Nobody did. But 12 minutes after he walked in, every single person in that room would leave changed. Some of them would spend the rest of their lives trying to find the right words for what they witnessed. Most of them never did. To understand what happened that January evening, you need to understand what Muhammad Ali was in 1969. He was 27 years old, and he was untouchable, not in the ring, but in the law. The United States government had taken everything from him: his boxing license, his passport, his title, his ability to earn a living doing the only thing he had ever done. He was facing 5 years in federal prison for refusing military induction. His lawyers were working, his appeals were pending, and he was waiting. Ali waiting was not a passive thing. He trained obsessively. He lectured at colleges, Yale, Harvard, Howard, where students packed auditoriums to hear him speak about war, about race, about what it meant to stand for something when the cost was everything. He was a man at war with his own government, and he carried it the way athletes carry their best conditioning, visibly, powerfully, without flinching. But underneath the public performance, underneath the speeches and the press conferences and the legal maneuvering, there was a fighter who had not fought professionally in nearly 2 years, and that fighter was restless in a way that went beyond the body. His mind needed competition. He found it in strange places during those years: philosophers, poets, chess players, scientists. Ali was voraciously, genuinely curious, an intellect that had been filtered through the narrow channel of boxing for so long that now, forced out of that channel, it was flooding in all directions. And one of the directions it flooded was toward a name he kept hearing in the corners of Los Angeles that year: Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee in 1969 was not yet a name the general public knew. He had appeared in the Green Hornet television series 3 years earlier, playing Kato, the sidekick. He was recognizable to television audiences, but not famous, not a star, not a household name. He was teaching private students out of a space in the Culver City area, charging significant money for private instruction, accepting only students he chose to accept, building something he hadn't yet named for the public. What he was building was a philosophy of combat that had no precedent. He called it Jeet Kune Do privately, the way of the intercepting fist, but to the people who had encountered it in practice, names were irrelevant. What mattered was the experience, and the experience, as described by the small number of people who had trained with Bruce by 1969, was consistently, remarkably strange. Not strange as in mystical, strange as in nothing about what I saw followed the rules I was certain applied. A Hollywood stuntman who had worked with Bruce on a production described it this way, years later, to a martial arts journalist. "I thought I knew what fast was. I've been doing fights on film for 8 years. I knew what the body could do. Then I watched Bruce work and I realized I'd been watching a different sport entirely." A professional boxer who trained briefly with Bruce's Ruley Circle described, "It wasn't just the speed. It was that he was already done before I knew he had started. The math didn't work." These stories moved through Hollywood, through the athletic community, through the world where film and fighting and physical culture overlapped. They reached Muhammad Ali's orbit sometime in 1968. And Ali, who trusted his body's instincts above instincting else, who believed the best way to understand a fighter was to be in the same room with them, decided he wanted to see it. He made a call. The call was passed along. An arrangement was made. No press, no cameras, no announcement. A private visit to Bruce Lee's trance fights. 6 people total: Ali, his head trainer, 2 of his regular sparring partners, and a mutual contact who had arranged the meeting. Bruce would have 1 student present, his closest disciple at the time, a young man who had been training with him for nearly 2 years. The date: a wet January evening in 1969. The location: Bruce Lee's private training space, Culver City, Los Angeles. The footage: never released. No recording is known to exist. What happened inside has been reconstructed from accounts given separately, years apart, by 3 of the 6 people present. Their accounts disagree on minor details. They agree completely on everything that matters. The space was not what Ali expected. He had been in gyms his entire life. He knew what a training space looked like, smelled like, felt like. The particular combination of rubber and sweat and chalk and the subtle metallic and cheval equipment. It was home territory. This wasn't that. The space was clean, spare. The floor was clear hardwood, uncluttered. There was a wooden dummy mounted near the back wall, the Wing Chun Mung Chung, a wooden apparatus with protruding arms used for specific striking trays. There were mirrors along one wall, old ones, slightly foxed at the edges, a heavy bag, a few pieces of equipment that Ali couldn't immediately name, and at the center of the space, standing still, was Bruce Lee. Ali's trainer later said, "I expected something more equipment, more people, more noise. It was like walking into a room where someone had taken everything unnecessary out and left only what was real." Ali took in the room, took in Bruce, said nothing for a moment. Bruce said nothing either. The mutual contact made brief introductions. The formality of it was slight, names exchanged, handshaken, but the real introduction was already happening. The 2 men reading each other across the distance of the room, each of them processing what they were seeing in the specific language of someone who has spent their life learning how to read bodies. What Ali saw, a man in his 5'7", approximately 135 pounds, who stood with a quality of stillness that was so complete it was almost aggressive. Not aggressive in threat, aggressive in depth, the stillness of someone who was utterly, completely present and had nothing left to perform. What Bruce saw, a man who was 6'3", 236 pounds, whose body was a masterwork of physical engineering, and who carried himself with the specific confidence of someone who had never been in a room where he was not the most physically capable person present. Both assessments were accurate. Both were about to be complicated.
Ali broke the silence the way Ali always broke silences, with language, with performance, with a theatrical ease that was as natural to him as breathing. He looked around the training space. He looked at the wooden dummy. He looked at Bruce. He grinned. "So this is where it happens," he said. "This is the secret school." He said it warmly. It wasn't mockery. Ali didn't mock people he didn't know. It was charm. The particular charm of a man who was also, always, probing. Bruce looked at him. That same quality of attention he had directed at the room when they entered. Curious, measuring, not performing a response. "There's no secret," Bruce said. "Just practice." Ali's trainer smiled at that. Ali raised an eyebrow. He liked the answer. You could see it in the slight adjustment of his expression. The recognition of a man who gave real answers instead of polished ones. "Show me practice then," Ali said. Bruce nodded once, turned to his student, spoke quietly. The student moved to the side of the room, creating space at the center. Ali's two sparring partners drifted to the wall. The mutual contact stepped back. The trainer crossed his arms. 6 people in a quiet room. The rain audible on the roof. Bruce Lee moved to the center of the space and stood. He said, "What do you want to see first?" Ali considered this. A real question deserved a real answer. "I want to see the thing that doesn't make sense," he said. "Everyone I talked to said there's something you do that doesn't make sense. Show me that." The room was quiet. Bruce Lee almost smiled. "All right," he said.
He started small. Not as a trick, not as showmanship. Bruce Lee starting small was always deliberate. He wanted you to understand the foundation before he showed you what was built on top of it. He asked Ali to hold his hand out, open palm, facing upward. Ali did, with the mild curiosity of a man who's seen enough to suspend judgment until judgment is earned. Bruce placed a coin on Ali's open palm. He told Ali to close his hand before Bruce could take the coin. Ali looked at him, at the coin, at his hand. This was the oldest street trick in the world, a reaction time demonstration. Ali had done it himself 100 times. He was famous for his reflexes. He was, by objective measurement, one of the fastest reacting athletes in the history of professional sport. He knew he was going to close his hand around that coin. He focused, his eyes fixed on Bruce's hand, his fingers tensed slightly, ready. Bruce reached for the coin. Ali closed his hand. He opened it. The coin was gone, in Bruce's hand. Ali stared at his own closed fist, opened it again, as if the coin might appear. It didn't. His trainer made a sound, not quite a laugh, something shorter than a laugh, the sound a person makes when they see something their brain immediately wants to reprocess. "Again," Ali said. His voice was different, still calm, but the register had changed. The performer had stepped back 1/2 step, and the fighter, the pure competitor who lived underneath all the theater, had stepped forward. Bruce placed the coin on Ali's palm again. Ali stared at Bruce's hand with the concentration of a man diffusing something. Bruce reached. Ali closed his fist with everything he had, the fastest closing of a hand that Muhammad Ali could produce, which was, by any reasonable athletic measure, extraordinarily fast. He opened his fist. The coin was gone. The room was silent. One of Ali's sparring partners, a man who had been in professional boxing long enough to believe he'd seen the full range of what hands could do, said quietly, to nobody in particular, "How?" It wasn't a question. It was just the word, sitting in the air by itself. Ali looked at Bruce, really looked at him. The grin was gone now. Not replaced by anything hostile, replaced by something open, the expression of a man who has just had a door appear in a wall he was certain was solid. "You didn't move," Ali said slowly. "I was watching your hand and you didn't move, and then you did, and I still missed it." Bruce nodded. "The decision and the movement are the same thing," he said. "There's no gap between them. That's what you're trying to close when you train. Most people keep a gap their whole life." Ali was quiet for a moment. Then, "Show me what else." What followed next is the moment that all 3 surviving accounts agree on with the precision of men who replayed it in their minds thousands of times. Bruce Lee asked Ali to stand naturally, not in a fighting stance, just standing. Ali's arms at his sides, weight on both feet. Normal. Bruce stood 3 feet away. He said, "I'm going to throw a punch." "Stop it." Ali looked at him. 3 feet was close enough that stopping a punch at that distance was almost impossible for anyone. But Ali had spent 15 years catching and deflecting punches from the best heavyweight fighters in the world. His defensive reflexes were the subject of sports science papers. His ability to slip a strike was considered borderline supernatural. He nodded. "Go ahead," Ali said. 3 seconds of silence. Bruce Lee threw the punch. Ali did not stop it. He did not move at all. The punch, a straight lead from the front hand, fired with the full mechanical chain of Jeet Kune Do, covered 3 feet of distance and stopped 1 inch from Ali's sternum. 1 inch.
Ali looked down at the fist against his chest. He had not reacted. Not because he chose not to. He had not reacted because by the time his eyes registered the beginning of the movement was over. There was no middle of the punch to react to. There was only before and after, and the fist that had somehow crossed 3 feet of air in a unit of time that his nervous system didn't have a measurement for. Ali's trainer would say later, "I've watched Muhammad train for 15 years. I've seen what he can do. I've seen what nobody else in the sport can do. And I watched him not move. I watched his face. He genuinely didn't see it." Ali stood with Bruce's fist 1 inch from his sternum. He didn't speak for a full 3 seconds. The rain continued on the roof. Nobody moved. Then Ali said, very quietly, the voice completely strict of performance, of theater, of anything except pure, honest response. "Do that again."
That request took something. Not weakness, nothing about Muhammad Ali in that room was weak, but asking to see something again after you missed it is an admission. A small one, a private one, but an admission nonetheless. Ali was a man who had built an entire identity on being faster than everyone else in the room, on being the one who saw things coming before they arrived, on making other men look slow, not through cruelty, but through the sheer physics of what his body could do. He had just asked a 135-pound man to show him something he missed, and he asked without flinching. That, according to his trainer, was the moment he understood something essential about Ali that he hadn't understood in 15 years of working beside him. Not that Ali was humble, everyone who knew him knew his humility was real beneath the theater, but that Ali's hunger to understand something true was stronger than his need to appear like he already understood it. The trainer said, a lesser man would have laughed it off, made a joke, changed the subject. Muhammad asked to see it again. That told me everything. Bruce Lee said nothing. He reset. 3 feet, same position, same stillness. Ali watched with everything he had. This time he committed his full attention to Bruce's shoulder, the shoulder being the first part of the body to telegraph a punch's initiation. If you watch the shoulder, you see the punch before the hand knows it's moving. It was a trick Ali had used against every heavyweight he'd ever faced. He watched the shoulder. Bruce threw the punch. The fist stopped 1 inch from Ali's sternum. Ali had not moved. He had watched the shoulder. He had seen nothing. The shoulder had not telegraphed. The chest had not rotated. The hip had not shifted. The punch had arrived the way sound arrives in a sealed room, present before the source is visible. Ali exhaled slowly through his nose. He looked at the fist. He looked at Bruce. There's no tell, Ali said. It was not quite a question. The tell is what you train out, Bruce said. Every movement that isn't the strike itself is information you're giving away. I spent years removing the information. Ali nodded slowly, the nod of a man filing something into a very specific place in his mind, a place he would return to. So the punch starts from nothing, Ali said. It starts from everything, Bruce said. Nothing is what it looks like from the outside. Another silence. The room held it comfortably now. The initial strangeness of the 2 men in the same space had dissolved, replaced by something more functional, more direct. The language of 2 people who share a fundamental obsession and have just confirmed they are speaking to each other across the correct frequency. What followed was not fight. It was not a sparring session in any conventional sense. It was closer to a dissection, 2 men taking apart the mechanics of combat in real time, each contributing from a completely different direction, each finding that the other's direction led to the same destination. Ali showed Bruce the shoulder roll first, the defensive technique he had developed over years of fighting men who hit harder than him at the amateur level before he became the hardest hitter in the room. The way he could receive a punch be becoming fluid at the moment of impact, not blocking, not dodging, but yielding in a way that diffused the force across a wider surface and redirected the energy outward instead of inward. Bruce watched it twice. Then he asked Ali to throw at him slowly, a controlled right hand at reduced speed, so he could feel the geometry of the technique with his hands, rather than just his eyes. Ali threw. Bruce received it with a deflection from Wing Chun, the Pak Sao, an intercepting palm that redirected the forearm rather than meeting it with opposing force.
The mechanics were different from Ali's shoulder roll, but the principle was identical. Both techniques were saying the same thing in different languages. Don't oppose force, redirect it. Don't be a wall, be a riverbank. Bruce said, same idea. Ali said, same idea. They looked at each other with the expression of men who have just discovered they were working on the same theorem from opposite ends of the library. Then Bruce demonstrated the straight lead again, slowly this time, walking Ali through the mechanics. The stance, weight forward, unlike conventional boxing which distributes weight back for power generation. The lead hand, extended further than boxing orthodoxy allowed, closing the gap before the opponent could respond. The chain of force from the floor, through the leg, through the hip, through the shoulder, through the forearm, not a muscular explosion, but a structural wave, the whole body becoming a single connected instrument. Ali watched it again, asked to feel the ending position, where Bruce's fist stopped in space, what the body looked like at full extension. He put his hand against Bruce's extended fist and pushed lightly, testing the structural integrity of the position. It didn't move. Not because Bruce was braced against it, because the position itself was locked, bone alignment and geometry doing the work that muscle would normally do, and doing it more efficiently, more completely, with less effort. Ali pushed harder. The fist held. Ali's trainer, he pushed on that fist like he was checking if a wall was real. The wall was real. Then Ali asked the question that 3 accounts all record, word for word, because it was the kind of question that sticks. How long did it take you? Bruce considered it. To learn it or to understand it? Ali, what's the difference? Bruce, learning it took months. Understanding it is still happening. Ali absorbed this. Then he said something that none of the accounts expected him to say. Something private. Something that sat outside the usual architecture of how Muhammad Ali presented himself to the world. He said, I've been fighting professionally since I was 18, and I still don't understand everything I do. I just do it and it works. He paused. That bothers me sometimes. Bruce looked at him. That's not a weakness, he said. That's where the next 10 years of work lives. The room held that exchange for a moment. Ali's trainer, who heard it from 4 feet away, said, I'd never heard Muhammad say anything like that to anyone. He said it like a fact, no performance, just a fact. And I think he needed someone to say what Bruce said back to him, because he listened to it the way he listened to very few things. The session had been running for nearly 90 minutes. The initial strangeness was long gone. The room held the comfortable intensity of people who had moved past social performance into the focused state of shared work. Ali's sparring partners had moved from the wall to the floor, sitting, watching. The mutual contact had stopped checking his watch. Bruce's student was in the corner, silent, witnessing with the particular attention of someone who knew they were inside a moment they would describe for the rest of their lives. Then one of Ali's sparring partners made a comment. The accounts vary slightly on the exact words. One account says it was directed at the coin trick. Another says it was a general observation about Bruce's size. But all 3 accounts agree on the tone. It was dismissive. Not viciously so. The casual dismissiveness of a large professional boxer who had watched an hour and a half of impressive technique, and had decided that technique, however refined, had a ceiling imposed by physics, by weight, by mass. The comment was something close to impressive for a small guy. The room changed temperature immediately. Not because anyone reacted loudly, because nobody reacted at all. The silence that followed was the specific silence of people who understood that something had just been said that was going to require a response, and were waiting to see what form the response took. Ali looked at his sparring partner, said nothing, looked at Bruce. Bruce's expression had not changed, but something in the air around him had shifted, the same shift Ali had noticed at the very beginning of the evening, before anything had been demonstrated. The gathering, the becoming more present. Bruce walked to the heavy bag without speaking. He stood in front of it. He set his feet. He threw a single kick. Later the accounts struggle here, not because the witnesses didn't see it clearly. The space was well lit, the distance was close, the bag was directly in their line of sight. The accounts struggle because language fails the physics. What 3 people separately described. The bag did not swing. The bag, a standard heavy bag, sand-filled leather, suspended on a chain from a beam, launched. It traveled horizontally, not in the pendulum arc that a struck bag always travels. It hit the far wall with a concussive impact. The chain went taut not from below but from the force of horizontal momentum. The bag spun on its chain before settling. Nobody in the room spoke. One of Ali's sparring partners, the one who had made the comment, was standing closest to the bag. He stepped back 1 involuntary step from the still-moving chain. His face, according to 2 accounts, was the face of a man who has made an arithmetic error and has just been shown the correct answer. He did not make another comment. Ali watched the bag slow on its chain. He turned to look at Bruce. Bruce's expression had not changed, but something in the air around him had shifted, the same shift Ali had noticed at the very beginning of the evening, before anything had been demonstrated. The gathering, the becoming more present. Bruce walked to the heavy bag without speaking. He stood in front of it. He set his feet. He threw a single kick. Later the accounts struggle here, not because the witnesses didn't see it clearly. The space was well lit, the distance was close, the bag was directly in their line of sight. The accounts struggle because language fails the physics. What 3 people separately described. The bag did not swing. The bag, a standard heavy bag, sand-filled leather, suspended on a chain from a beam, launched. It traveled horizontally, not in the pendulum arc that a struck bag always travels. It hit the far wall with a concussive impact. The chain went taut not from below but from the force of horizontal momentum. The bag spun on its chain before settling. Nobody in the room spoke.
One of Ali's sparring partners, the one who had made the comment, was standing closest to the bag. He stepped back one involuntary step from the still-moving chain. His face, according to 2 accounts, was the face of a man who has made an arithmetic error and has just been shown the correct answer. He did not make another comment. He did not make another comment. Ali watched the bag slow on its chain. He turned to look at Bruce. Bruce's expression had not changed, but something in the air around him had shifted. The same shift Ali had noticed at the very beginning of the evening, before anything had been demonstrated. The gathering, the becoming more present. Bruce walked to the heavy bag without speaking. He stood in front of it. He set his feet. He threw a single kick. Later the accounts struggle here, not because the witnesses didn't see it clearly. The space was well lit, the distance was close, the bag was directly in their line of sight. The accounts struggle because language fails the physics. What 3 people separated described. The bag did not swing. The bag, a standard heavy bag, sand-filled leather, suspended on a chain from a beam, launched. It traveled horizontally, not in the pendulum arc that a struck bag always travels. It hit the far wall with a concussive impact. The chain went taut not from below but from the force of horizontal momentum. The bag spun on its chain before settling. Nobody in the room spoke. One of Ali's sparring partners, the one who had made the comment, was standing closest to the bag. He stepped back one involuntary step from the still-moving chain. His face, according to 2 accounts, was the face of a man who has made an arithmetic error and has just been shown the correct answer. He did not make another comment. Ali watched the bag slow on its chain. He turned to look at Bruce. Bruce's expression had not changed, but something in the air around him had shifted. The same shift Ali had noticed at the very beginning of the evening, before anything had been demonstrated. The gathering, the becoming more present. Bruce walked to the heavy bag without speaking. He stood in front of it. He set his feet. He threw a single kick. Later the accounts struggle here, not because the witnesses didn't see it clearly. The space was well lit, the distance was close, the bag was directly in their line of sight. The accounts struggle because language fails the physics. What 3 people separately described. The bag did not swing. The bag, a standard heavy bag, sand-filled leather, suspended on a chain from a beam, launched. It traveled horizontally, not in the pendulum arc that a struck bag always travels. It hit the far wall with a concussive impact. The chain went taut not from below but from the force of horizontal momentum. The bag spun on its chain before settling.
The session ended the way serious sessions between serious people always end, not with ceremony, but with the gradual, natural conclusion of the work. The intensity wound down. People moved. Jackets were retrieved. Water was drunk. Ali and Bruce stood near the door for a final few minutes, apart from the others. What they said to each other privately in those minutes was never reported by either man. What is known, Ali referenced Bruce Lee specifically in 2 separate recorded conversations in later years. The first, in 1975, to a journalist who asked about the fastest thing Ali had ever personally witnessed. Ali's answer was careful and deliberate, the answer of a man who had decided in advance what he was willing to share publicly and what he wasn't. He said, "I've seen things I can't explain, I'll say that. I've been in rooms where I saw things I couldn't put in the correct category, and that's all I'll say." The journalist pressed, "Faster than you?" Ali smiled, the private smile, not the showman's expression, the other one. "Different," he said. "Not faster than me. Different than everything." The second reference came in a 1980 interview, after Bruce had been dead for 7 years. Ali was asked about cross-training, about whether boxers should study other martial arts. He said, "There was a man I knew once, small man, changed the way I thought about some things. You don't need to know his name, but if you ever get the chance to be in a room with someone who makes you feel like you don't know something, stay in that room. Stay as long as they'll let you." He was asked to elaborate. He shook his head, still smiling, still private. "Some rooms," he said, "are for the people who were in them." The 6 people dispersed into their separate lives. No press release, no announcement, no story in the Los Angeles Times, no segment on the evening news, nothing to indicate that 2 of the most physically exceptional human beings of the 20th century had spent 2 hours in a quiet room together, taking apart the mechanics of what the human body could do. But the story moved, the way all true stories move when the people who hold them can't quite contain them. Ali's trainer told a colleague years later, in the context of a conversation about reaction time, just one detail, the coin trick, just that one detail. The colleague told someone else. The detail multiplied and changed as it traveled, the way details do. Bruce's student, the one who had been present, watching from the corner, carried it differently. He didn't tell the story publicly, but it shaped the way he taught Jeet Kune Do for the rest of his career. The understanding that the principles Bruce demonstrated that night were not theoretical, that they held up in the presence of one of the greatest athletes who had ever lived, that they survived contact with that level of human excellence, became a foundation stone in how he communicated what Bruce's work actually meant. And Ali himself carried something out of that room that showed up not in interviews or anecdotes, but in the texture of how he talked about combat for the rest of his life. A recurring theme in his later conversations about boxing,
The idea that what you train out of yourself is more important than what you train into yourself. The deletions matter more than the additions. Speed is not gained, it's revealed by removing everything that was slowing it down. He never attributed that idea to anyone, but the people who knew the full story recognized it immediately. There is a line in Bruce Lee's notebooks, written sometime around 1968 or 1969, the exact date uncertain, that reads, "The man who can strike without preparation has spent years preparing." This is the center of everything. The coin trick wasn't magic. It was the product of thousands of hours of training the nervous system to eliminate the gap between perception and action. The straight lead that Ali couldn't see wasn't superhuman. It was the result of Bruce having identified and removed every single unnecessary component from the striking motion, until what remained was pure, unencumbered initiation. Most people who study martial arts spend their lives adding things: techniques, combinations, responses. Their mental library grows larger, and their response time grows slower, because the larger the library, the longer the search. Bruce went the other direction. He subtracted, relentlessly. He asked of every technique, every movement, every trained response, what is this doing that the strike itself cannot do? And if the answer was nothing, he removed it. He refined the straight lead until there was nothing left in it except the destination. He trained his decision speed until the decision and the action share the same instant. He was building what physicists would later call a minimum path, the shortest possible route between intention and impact with every unnecessary step removed. And the result was a punch that Muhammad Ali, with 15 years of professional training and the fastest defensive reflexes in heavyweight boxing history, could not react to from 3 feet away. Not because Ali was slow, because Bruce had made slowness impossible by removing time from the equation. This is what Ali recognized in that gymnasium. Not just a faster man, a man who had asked a different question entirely and followed it somewhere Ali hadn't gone. The question wasn't, how do I get faster? The question was, what is speed actually, and what is standing in its way? Bruce had answered that question more completely than anyone before him, and perhaps since. And the answer, stripped to its core, carried in the grain of every movement he made, was this: speed is what's left when you remove the hesitation. Everything else is just hesitation with good form. Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973. He was 32 years old. He had spent those 32 years asking the hardest possible questions about what the body could do, following the answers into territory that had no maps, and building something so far ahead of his time that the world is still measuring the distance. He weighed 130 pounds at the end. He had, in his brief time, made professional boxers question their understanding of speed, made heavyweight champions ask to see things twice, made large men step back from the evidence of what a single kick could do to a heavy bag, not by being bigger, not by being more conventionally powerful, by understanding something more completely than anyone else in the room. The men who encountered him in those private moments, away from the films, away from the choreography, away from the public mythology, carried something specific in their bodies afterward, not just the memory of what they saw, something more physical than memory, a recalibration, the body's version of having its assumptions corrected. Ali's trainer, near the end of his life, was asked in that small martial arts publication about the greatest athlete he had ever personally observed. He had spent 15 years beside Muhammad Ali. He had watched Ali train, fight, perform at levels that remain unsurpassed in the history of heavyweight boxing. He paused for a long time before answering. Then he said, "I saw 2 kinds of greatness in my life. One kind you could measure. You could put it in numbers, weight, speed, record, title. The other kind you couldn't measure, because it didn't fit in any of the categories the measurements were designed for. I saw both kinds, and the kind you can't measure is the kind that stays with you." He didn't say Bruce Lee's name. He didn't need to.
There is a particular quality to the encounters that last, not the ones that make the newspapers, not the ones captured on film, replayed, analyzed, archived, the ones that happen in quiet rooms with no cameras, between people who are serious enough about their craft to seek out the edges of it, to walk into unfamiliar spaces and say, "Show me what I don't know." Muhammad Ali walked into a quiet room in Los Angeles on a rainy January evening in 1969 and placed a coin on his open palm. He was certain he would close his hand around it. He didn't. He asked to try again. He still didn't. And in that gap, between the certainty and the failure, between the confidence and the honest how, something opened. Not humiliation, not defeat, something rarer. The specific opening that only appears when a person encounters the outer edge of what they thought was the full extent of the possible. Bruce Lee lived on that edge. He didn't just visit it, he built his home there. He spent every day of his short life pushing the edge further, asking the question harder, removing one more layer of unnecessary hesitation from the gap between intention and action. The coin was gone before Ali's fingers closed, The punch was over before Ali's eyes registered the beginning. The kick hit the bag before anyone in the room had fully processed that he had moved. This is what Bruce Lee was. Not a myth, not a movie, not a choreographed legend built in a studio. A man who understood something so deeply that it looked from the outside like something that couldn't be real. It was real. 9 people saw parts of it at different times in different rooms across the years of his life. Ali saw it on a January night with rain on the roof, and the room held perfectly still. And when he walked out of that building and back into his complicated, magnificent, politically radioactive life, he carried something new in the body. Not a technique, not a trick, an understanding that the most dangerous thing in any room is not the biggest thing in the room. It's the thing that moves before you decide to watch for it. The coin was already gone. It was always already gone. You just thought you were watching closely enough. If you felt that, if something in that quiet gymnasium stayed with you, then you already know why this channel exists. We find the rooms history forgot to document. The moments that didn't make the record books because the people inside them understood that some things are too real for cameras. The encounters between extraordinary people that happened in the margins, in the rain, behind frosted glass, with no one watching, except the 9 people who couldn't quite find the words afterward. There are more stories like this one. There are rooms you haven't been inside yet. Subscribe, hit the bell, share this with someone who still believes that size is the whole story. And remember what Ali took home that night. Real speed doesn't announce itself. By the time you see it coming, it's already finished.